Hi. Okay. Good evening. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Government Operations Committee. It's Monday, May 5th. It's 5:15. Voting members of this committee are Councilor Beck, Councilor Dean, Councilor Maller. Councilor Trumbull is unavailable this evening and will not be joining us. And I'm Sue Hawes, I'll be chairing. We have, other than that, we have around the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Council Chair Pelletier, Councilor Fish, and I get everybody, Councilor Fornia. And we will have with us this evening Deb Laurie, City Manager. She's filling in for the Assistant City Manager, Courtney O'Donnell. So I think with that, we have 8 items on the agenda. The first one is dealing with accepting and appropriating $75,000 that we voted on at the last council meeting. It's supposed to be on here. It did get added today, so Deb,
I'm gonna bring Anya Coletta. As we actually applied for this grant funding a couple of months ago, and we're very pleased to receive notification recently that the funds have been awarded to us.
Correct. Yes, we applied in December of last year. For this grant, we covered 2 things, an energy audit for 5 city buildings, and then the rest of it would be used for mainly bicycle parking at different locations around town. Approximately 15 schools, might have that number right. 5 city parks, a bunch downtown, and then some of the cross center. And then we would also be doing a secure bike storage facility at the parking garage. And the 5 city buildings that we would be doing an energy audit of are 2 schools, 2 buildings at the golf course, and then the innovation center. So.
Nice. So we did get questions from you?
Yeah, I'm just curious. We have no bicycle facilities at any of the schools. I thought that was pretty standard at most schools, facilities park bikes.
They do have some, but I'm under the impression they need more. That's what they said.
They've probably been updated from when we had them.
We used to use more bikes than they do today. I don't know, but I was just curious. It seems like it's a redundancy if they're putting more in when they already have them.
Any other comments, questions on this item? Now, what do you need from us?
So this will be a referral back because it was
Going
first
back,
reading.
that's
This
right,
is
that
the
was first reading.
appropriation.
Okay,
So that was the purpose of the grants. This will be appropriating the grant money and we'll move forward with the work plan as outlined.
then we would love to have a motion.
So moved.
Okay, all right, that so moved and second was on the sending this back to council for second reading. Okay. There's no doubts. We'll move it forward. Our next item is a bench donation for Bangor Municipal Golf Course from the family of Phil Masters.
And Tracy Willett, Parks and Rec Director. It's Tracy Willett for the next 4 items if you're
It's the
so
Tracy
willing.
show.
It is that he's sticking around for events
Okay.
later this evening too. Yes.
Thank you, Tracy Willett, Parks and Recreation Director. First couple of items deal with accepting bench donations. The first, the Masters family reached out to staff to the possibility of donating a bench to the golf course, and they'd like to do that. Bill was pretty active here in the community and certainly an avid golfer. So we'd be seeking the committee's acceptance of a bench donation from the Masters family.
Any questions about Council Mallon?
I have a question. Do we have a standard bench that we're requiring, or are they coming up with whatever they want?
So typically we've done these before. We try to match it best with wherever the bench is going. So for example, on the waterfront, either the granite benches along the walkway, Fairmount Park, we try to match them to the black iron benches that we have there. So to try and answer your question at the golf course, it would blend in with the other amenities at the golf course. Families have been very good about working with us for that purpose. And this would be the same scenario that they'll reach out to staff to determine what kind of bench we'd like to see up there and use at the golf course.
Okay, and the only reason I ask is because I was curious as to costs. I'd like to think we would have a standard bench at a specific cost, because I don't like to see someone come in and get a bench for $200 and someone else come in and it's $2,000.
No, we try to work with the family to try and at least present, an economically reasonable suggestion to them. Typically, the iron benches that we use in our city parks along the waterfront range in pricing from $750 to $1,000. The bench that we'll probably do at the golf course won't be that expensive. It'll include a plaque of some kind, with the naming. Currently, your Park Recreation and Harbor Advisory Committee has been discussing a policy which will
Yeah.
standardize a lot of that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
actually coming back to their agenda this coming Thursday.
If we accept the bench, are we responsible for maintaining it or replacing it if it's damaged, or how?
Currently, that's what happens if it's one of ours. And then if it is indeed damaged and needs to be replaced, we deal with that. The policy that being drafted right now, the advisory committee is considering will address many of those things and lay out specific language for that.
So should we wait till they finish before we?
My suggestion would be our recommendation for you folks would be to accept the donation now, consistent with what we've done in the past with bench donations. It's been a fairly common request for folks over the years. There's another one that we're going to discuss next, that has some time sensitivity to it and the occasion that we're having this discussion. There is some time sensitivity to it. So the request that you have in front of you for both benches is consistent with how staff has approached these similar requests over the years.
When will we get the bench?
From here, just a matter of timing on when it will be ordered and placed. So a time certain, I can't specifically say, but however long it takes us to get it ordered and for them to have it placed.
Council Forney?
On the Kelly nine or the,
So my understanding is that Mr. Masters had a hole in one on number 3. Which side? I can't remember off the top of my head. So it's either
must be the,
championship course.
yes,
So that's probably where it's gonna end up.
yes, good spot.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this item? And we do need to, have a motion to accept it.
I'll make a motion to accept the bench.
I will second the motion. Also, I know the family personally, so I think it's wonderful that they're doing this.
Been moved and seconded. If there is no objection or further discussion, it will move forward. Okay, we're good. Item number 3. Another bench.
Another bench request, unfortunately, circumstance is very different. This comes from the family of Eliana Campbell. They've approached to donate a bench to be placed in the waterfront in child's memory. They are scheduling a walk later in the month for the same purpose, to recognize the family and honor the family and of Eliana. So again, they've been working with us to get some pricing for appropriate benches for the waterfront. I shared with them a couple of examples that already exist on the waterfront to blend in with what we already have. Specifically the black iron benches that we have down there, as well as the granite style benches that have been accepted in the past. So the request is similar for this bench as well.
Questions, comments? Seeing none. Take a
What a
motion.
motion.
Yeah, we need a motion.
I'd make a motion to accept this donation.
I will second that. And it's been moved and seconded to accept the bench for the waterfront. And I would assume that would be there this season,
Oh, yeah,
so.
their hope and goal is to have it in place in time for the walk at the end of the month. They have found a fabricator to do that for them. And again, much the same discussion. What should we put down there? What can we do? And that kind of thing. So very, very cooperative.
Right. Well, just seeing no objections, then that one will go forward to council as well. Director Willett, you have another item.
This would be the Mansfield Stadium.
Nope,
Oh,
No,
for,
Talbot.
Talbot Trail. I already pulled up my Mansfield memo, sorry,
Yeah.
my apologies. As I think this committee, or at least council is aware, been working with the Talbots to find another amenity here in the city that could be appropriately named after Mr. Talbot. The Park Recreation Harbor Advisory Committee discussed this a couple times at their meetings. And we have arrived at a section of trail, the new trail, as I say new, it's been in place probably 3 or 4 years now, that connected the end of Sylvan Road to Stillwater Avenue, completing the entire connection identified by the Bangor Trails Report back in 2008, and has been often referred to as Trail 5. It felt it would be appropriate to name what has been formerly known as Trail 5 to Talbot Trail. The request is for the committee to approve that designation tonight. And this will be in order on council meeting on
Yes.
Monday night.
Okay. Council Beck.
Question, with our new amended naming policy, I thought the next step was to refer it to the advisory committee on racial equity and inclusion and human rights.
and the timing just got off coming out of the Parks and Rec, and now the committee is meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So we can certainly make sure that they're aware of that, and I have been in contact with the Talbot family as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So they'll review it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't come back to
It'll
us?
be on the council Monday night.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions, comments? Any motion from Monday night?
Well.
What?
I just want to make sure I call in. So are we moving to send it to the advisory committee first? That should be the next step, or are we moving and move it there and barring no objection? Okay, then I'll move that we have referred to the advisory committee on racial equity, inclusion, and human rights, and barring no objection from them. Yeah, certainly put it on the next council meeting for us.
There a second? I'll second that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and if there's no objection, then we'll have passage.
Thank you.
Next item. Now you're at,
Now my man's.
now you're in.
As some or all of you know, may know, the operation and management of Mansfield Stadium at Haver Park has been through a management agreement with Bangor Westside Little League. That agreement expired, and we've been in the process of transitioning the operation from what formerly was known as Westside Little League. They are now Bangor Little League, to a completely city operation. One of the functions of the operation of the management of the facility was proceeds from the stadium, i.e. concession sales, gate admissions, donations, those kinds of things that went back into the facility for maintenance materials, capital expenditures for equipment and amenities. And the city and Little League over the years have essentially split those costs evenly. And if you've been to Mansfield Stadium, certainly to walk in there, it's one of the premier baseball facilities in the state. So certainly the relationship has been beneficial for the city, as well as those hundreds, if not thousands of youth that use that facility each and every year. So we're at the point now, one of the pieces of the transition is to like to establish a dedicated fund for Mansfield Stadium and those proceeds to be used exclusively for that, from the proceeds that come out of it, and whatever they have left that they would donate to the city to put into this account. So the ask tonight is for us to be able to establish that dedicated fund for Mansfield Stadium. There's an order within your materials tonight that would dictate and direct how those funds could be used. We've used a similar approach in the past with our current community garden and skate park, and both have worked well. So the ask tonight is to be able to establish that similar account for Mansfield Stadium.
Comments, questions?
We got the memo, we didn't get the,
Do anything else?
we didn't get the order.
The order will put, if you're good with the concept, we'll put the order on for Monday nights.
Sure, and then, sorry, just a follow-up, so it just sounds like it's something like a formality, like now that the leagues have merged, this just makes everything easier.
It's one of the pieces that, yes, one of the pieces we'd like to continue to move forward with.
Sure.
Councilman Elliott, you have a question?
Well, yeah, I'm curious about, who's administering the fund? You, in your department?
And finance director. I mean, the order will include oversight by the finance director. It'll be as well as a Parks and Recreation Department, so myself or the director, along with the finance director, will oversee and manage and make sure that,
Who's, what representation does the Little League have in deciding where you're spending the funds? None?
nothing. That's part of the transition from
Okay.
them to us.
So what's the agreement you're getting?
The agreement, the fund would allow us, so currently Mansfield Stadium has a concession over there, gate receipts, they take donations. Those funds were being held through the management agreement by the league. That no longer exists. So, and.
So you're just eliminating the Little League?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Because it doesn't specifically spell that out. It looks like they're still involved.
No, they are not.
Council Fornia?
Have we thought about if Westside Little League was accepting donations, they were 501c3?
Yes, is that a C3, a C
C3.
for recreational
Or not.
sports?
Or it's a nonprofit,
I don't, I don't.
C4?
Yeah, yes,
So they can accept donations. So can the city accept
yes,
donations?
yes.
So
And the order, had it been in there, would have, there'd be language in it to ensure that if indeed it was a tax deductible donation, that appropriate record keeping and acknowledgement would be done.
thank you. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
And I apologize for not having the order.
Councilor Dean, did you have something or were you just? Moving around, okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. This also needs to go forward.
In a motion?
If there's no objection, yeah, we'll move forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Nobody's going,
And I'll walk away.
so it's.
To come for another day.
Okay.
I checked on my boxes.
What's baseball season? That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the legislative testimony for LD 104 and LD 1847.
Yes, and this is gonna be Jen Gunderman coming from the folks in our prevention area, specifically, I think Jamie Comstock spent a number of years on the marijuana policies and committees and things like that, and these came up last week. We did include the testimony in the updated packet this morning, but Jen can happily run through the summaries for you.
So hi, Jen Gunderman,
evening.
Director of Bangor Public Health and Community Services. So yes, this testimony is provided by Jamie Comstock as Debbie has mentioned, has spent many, many years working around cannabis policy. And this is really about protection for people who use cannabis medically and for youth. As you can see in the testimony, that more than 30 other states with medical cannabis programs, Maine is the only one that does not mandate testing for harmful substances. So these policies, if you look on the second page, what the act will actually propose. So establish maximum potency of THC, they'll form a study group to examine youth cannabis use, diverting a portion of the current adult use cannabis tax towards public health and safety awareness and education, and then requiring that edible gummies sold in the adult use program that aren't stamped or embossed with the universal symbol be sold in blister packaging to reduce the risk of accidental ingestion. So they can't open up a bottle and ingest, but it's like those medical blister packs. So as Jamie has put this testimony together, looking for your approval to be able to submit to this testimony. The public hearing has already taken place, but we're still able to submit testimony on these two LDs.
Submitting on an ought to pass.
Yes, on an octopus.
Comments? Objections to sponsoring this or submitting it? Seeing no objections?
Thank you.
There are minutes. Were those two, yes, they were, okay. So you have the, public health update.
Yes, so I looked at my list and I realized maybe I'll start with some good news. That influenza is waning for the season to return next season. But a couple of months ago, we saw significant spikes, even more sort of hospitalizations and a little bit more activity than last year around influenza, and those numbers are going down. So thank goodness for good weather. Thank goodness for a vaccine that prevented severe illness. We hope to not see that again for a few more months. So the remainder of my update, I'm just really highlight some of the things that we're working on or addressing at the health department. First of all, HIV cluster, as of last Thursday, when the most recent data is updated on the CDC webpage, we are at 24 cases. And those are 24 cases of people who have tested positive over the last about 19 to 20 months and have some epidemiological connection. Working with a number of community partners, really trying to address all the levels of prevention and testing and treatment and care and support services. There are significant challenges to this outbreak. And the challenge really is that people who are most impacted lead very complex lives with a lot of struggles. And so we are working again with community partners to break down as many of those barriers as possible. One of the things that's happened actually as of today is Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness, their syringe service program has moved over to Hancock Street, which is where HEAL used to be. That is a space that people know as a resource. So we're hoping that will continue to allow people to be able to access clean needles. We have been engaging in sort of strategies to increase testing through some of our CDC funding. We've been able to offer incentives. What I call are like the testing coupon cards. We've given them out to a number of organizations to pass out to encourage testing. We're working around breaking down the barriers to accessing care and treatment. As I've shared with you, if there's one thing that I try and reiterate is that this outbreak is going to, one of the most important factors is people who test positive to get their viral loads like undetectable. And undetectable means that people lead healthy and happy lives and they can't transmit the virus. And so that's done by adhering to medication, and there are significant barriers there. One of the breakthroughs in HIV treatment is an injectable medication that happens about once a month. And so that medication is being offered and we're seeing maybe a little bit more adherence there. It's not a pill that someone has to take every day. And then housing, trying to have, move people into stable housing, food, clothes, all the basic needs as well. And probably the most important factor in all of this is relationship building with people who have been newly diagnosed with HIV or who are at risk or who are caring for somebody. So we're working really hard just to build those relationships and in the meantime, reduce stigma. So we continue to look for creative ways. We continue to look to the research. We continue to look to other entities across the country that have had to address outbreaks in their communities, and that continues to evolve. That leads to the Wabanaki Center. One of the things that we've recognized in the complexity of this population is that one of the models used in Indiana and other locations is what's been sort of referred to as a one-stop shop. It's a place where you break down as many barriers as possible for people to be able to access as many of the services in one location. So with Wabanaki moving over their syringe service to the HEAL space, there's also space there to provide other important services. Testing, medical outreach, basic care, connection to outreach workers, connection to people who can do a warm handoff to recovery or medication-assisted treatment. And so we have been in ongoing conversations as I've have updated you along the way, that we are going to look to come into that space with some of our current services, so that people who come to the WAB Center can get a lot of their needs met. And we're working with other community partners like PCHC, Family Planning, CHCS, and that's a place where they can meet clients as well. Particularly with the warming shelters closed now, that's where street outreach was happening. That's not happening. People are a little bit more scattered. And so right now, we at the health department have been able to identify our services that we can extend in that space. And we're currently exploring options for funding to help with the rent space and with some supplies that we need. And we're also hoping, we're over in over by the airport. It's not easily accessible for this population to be able to access services. So in the heal space, there's a sidewalk from downtown to that space. So we're hoping that it'll just break down more barriers.
Council Dean, you have a question?
I did have a question. Now that the Hancock site is open, does that mean the Park Street has been closed to the SSP?
Yes,
So it's all at Hancock.
it's all in Hancock. Yes.
And has there been any interest in the Heart Center? Has anyone come forward interested in opening that?
I'm not aware of anybody exploring day programs at this time.
Other comments? Council Leonard?
Regarding certain illnesses that have been spreading, especially during this previous winter, there have been a lot of diseases that have been very foreign to Mainers, whether it's RSV or norovirus. And I think my concern, a lot of concerns are like what other diseases are going to impact the community. And I know there's no way to predict that, but I feel like it's important for us to develop some sort of strategies to get the word out there more than just getting the influenza vaccine, just to make sure that there are a lot of senior citizens that, for example, if they get RSV and they have a symptom where they are unable to breathe, some of them are not going to make it. And so the sooner we can get this information out there to get these vaccines that are available, the less burden that these St. Joe's and Northern Light are going to have. So if there's something that we can do leading up to the winter, I think that's going to be really, really important to stave off a lot of those unfortunate deaths that did occur this winter.
I'm so glad that you said that. It actually builds off of a couple of these things, and I can add to that is
Please.
we are trying really hard to look ahead. We call that in public health emerging issues. Some of the things that are on our eye right now is, of course, avian flu.
Yep.
That's a major concern for us. Measles, with the measles outbreak that's happened in Texas and in Arizona, New Mexico. We also know that there are cases of measles in Vermont that have been linked to international travel. So I am just really blown away by the wonderful collaboration with our healthcare systems. So I met last week with infectious disease specialists from St. Joe's, PCHC, and Northern Light EMC on the same call, all of us together talking about how can we be proactive together. We learned a lot from COVID. Let's take those lessons. And so we're talking about how we can bring together and have a coordinated educational message, thinking about who needs to be vaccinated right now. We're doing some of that education out of our health department. Same with vector-borne disease. Last year, we saw mosquito-borne disease here in Maine, here in Bangor, more than what we've seen in the past. So we brought on an intern this past semester to build basically a whole bunch of educational materials for the public, for kids. We're getting them translated into different languages. She built us a social media toolkit so that we can be posting things about mosquito-borne disease. So we are trying to think a little bit more ahead in terms of what do we need to be prepared for education, for surveillance, for policy, all those public health services. The last piece that I'll mention is with our infrastructure budget from CDC, we have been looking to hire an infectious disease specialist. And this person will be the person to say, this is what we're reading in their literature that's coming down. This is what CDC is saying. This is what, what we're seeing as potentially on the horizon. And what do we need to prepare? What partners do we need to engage with? What educational messages? What policy? So we will be a little bit more proactive. There's times we're gonna be absolutely reactive, but to really think ahead.
Wonderful, thank you.
Council Pelletier, did you have? your hand up? Nope. Council Fish?
It's tick season,
Yes.
and I wondered, is there anything new or different? I know there's a lot of, diseases, more and more people I know are getting, different sicknesses. And it doesn't seem like there's any let up in that. So is that play a part at all of our awareness and our planning and our education?
Absolutely. Because tick-borne disease has been around for a while, there's some really good educational materials there that we're gonna leverage from Maine CDC. And also to promote like where you can get your tick tested, where it identified. What's interesting, also we applied for a Gorman grant not too long ago that we're waiting for. Some of that funding would be able to purchase a bunch of the tick spoons. That we'd be able to give out, work with daycares, work with Eastern Agency on Aging to be able to provide some of that. Yeah, tick season is here. And what we've seen from Maine CDC data, for example, last year, everyone thinks ticks, they think Lyme disease, absolutely right. But actually anaplasmosis was the most reported tick-borne disease. And mostly the common theme is among all those tick-borne diseases is they can be neurological, it's a fever, there's various symptoms, but if not treated quickly, some of those could result in long-term consequences. So you're right, it's tick season, we gotta get our tick-borne education materials going too.
Anyone else? Council Mellon?
Quick question. Is it safe to assume you've included in your budget for next year some of these changes?
Here's the challenge with our budget. Our budget is mostly federal and state funds. So our staff, our materials, our outside funding sources. So everything that I've mentioned is pretty much leveraged from outside funds. The Gorman Foundation, Maine CDC infrastructure funds. So everything that I've mentioned has been funding outside of the city. Did I articulate that accurately?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think to Councilor Maller's point, and likely other councilors as well, this is always a conversation when we're looking at the public health budget every year. If the public health budget looks relatively small, and it's because of all of the additional grant funds that we receive. So I don't say it, but Dave Little, the finance director, will put together sort of a list of the additional funds that we get that are utilized in the public health department, as well as the FTEs and sort of an overview of what their time frame is and generally a general description of what their purpose is.
Would it be okay just to mention the last two things on my list here? One of them is I just want to let you know is that we did feel our first federal impact. We lost about $16,000 in federal funding for a grant that ended sooner than what we expected. We were able, that $16,000 covered some staff time. We were able to move around some other federal and state funding that we had to be able to cover that staff time, and we have not lost anybody. We are constantly keeping an eye on what the federal funding situation is. We've experienced some other changes in policy and project officer contacts at the federal level, but we kind of took our first little hit about a few weeks ago. And then the last thing that I just want to mention is a thank you to anyone who completed our strategic planning survey. We got a number of responses from between city council, outside organizations, departments within the city. And we've now moved to the next phase of our strategic planning of developing objectives and strategies. And I'll share those once we get them finalized. Thank you.
Thanks. Excuse me. Any further questions for Jen from the public health? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Our last item is the revisions to chapter 99 of disruptive property, and I understand here comes Attorney Sevchuk.
Hi, David Sevchuk, City Solicitor. In response to some requests from citizens who live near nuisance or disruptive type properties, the staff has met, executive and legal and, the police, have met to talk about whether we should update, the disruptive property ordinance at this time to try to, kind of respond to those needs. Just a real quick, the city already has a disruptive property ordinance that applies to residential properties. It was passed in 2013, and what it does is it lists 5 activities that are listed as what could be considered disruptive activities. And then it sets up sort of a timetable so that if there are 2 or more disruptive activities within 60 days, or 3 or more within 120 days, or 4 or more within 150 days, 180 days, or 5 or more within 360 days, then the property could be classified as a disruptive property. And those are disruptive activities is defined as activities that have been confirmed by the police chief as being disruptive activities. So it has a level of checks and balances to it. So the proposed revisions that staff has put together for your review, I would ask that, either direct to move it forward, or no, if you would not like this type of update, or if you think that there should be, if you prefer some sort of change to what we have put together, I want to know that as well tonight. So we've really suggested 4 overall changes. 2 of them are adding 2 items to the list of disruptive activities in the definition of disruptive activities. One would be situations involving police responding to a property created by the owner or a tenant or their guests or invitees, where the police make an arrest for an activity that is a crime or a civil infraction. That one's kind of an objective standard. And then the second one that that are proposed for a revision would be intoxication on public ways within 300 feet of the property. There are 2 other changes that we have proposed here. One would be making other properties also subject to the ordinance, other than just residential properties. In other words, we remove the residential limitation from that. And that would cover certain commercial properties that are adjacent to residential properties that would possibly, cause this type of disruptive activities. And then there was another smaller one, just removing the requirement that a building be on the property. So that there could be disruptive properties that don't have a building on the property. Bonfires and such like that, they could still qualify as disruptive properties with disruptive activities. And so that there's progressive sort of notice and action provisions that are already in the disruptive property ordinance that are set up for each successive disruptive event. And then there's that's not anything we're proposing a change of. And so those are the changes that we put into the proposed revisions, and I welcome your discussion and guidance on that.
Council Brett?
So I just have two questions. First question is, because we're taking the word residential out, I look at, I say loud music, my first thought is the waterfront. We get a lot of some complaints about the music, not a lot, but some. They would still have a carve out, right? They still wouldn't have, okay.
Correct. The properties that have individual use agreements with the city would be subject to the issues covered in the terms of their agreements.
Okay.
And that particular property has noise restrictions that have to be complied with right in the lease agreement. And so that wouldn't change.
And the second question I have is as we're counting the number of instances, it's attached to the property itself. Like if it's tenants who are causing the trouble, and then the landlord says, hey, I took care of them. I, gave them the warning, and then they didn't comply, so I evicted them. I'm good, right? Well, it's still attached to the property itself.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Council Pierce?
If it's property, for instance, private commercial property, say down by the railroad, and it's known that there's a gathering of, people constantly down there, and they're playing loud music and there's been multiple calls, how would something like that be handled? How does this ordinance apply for that?
Well, the loud music is already in.
Okay,
And so it's just, the police take care of that a certain way now, and that wouldn't change. So there are, and I haven't discussed that in detail with the police chief, but they have noise levels that they go by and certain standards, and so that there's nothing in our proposed changes that would relate to any of that.
Councilor Fornia?
So you've had conversations with PD, are you
Yes.
anticipating more properties that might hit that list?
Well, with these proposed additional 2 types of disruptive activities, I mean, there's already a catch-all in the ordinance that says other similar activities occurring on the property. So in theory, the police could use that catch-all, but I think catch-alls are kind of hard to use in real life. But if you have a couple of different types of activities that are defined as disruptive, I think that makes it easier for the police to use the ordinance. My understanding is that the way that the police typically use this is more the fact that it exists and what they can do. They bring this to the attention of the property owner to get, voluntary compliance from the property owner without, I don't think that they have really gone through the steps very often. But just the fact that we have this in the ordinance allows them to, talk to the property owner about what could be done here if we don't have compliance.
So I'm just thinking of all the things that happened over here by Franklin Place.
Mhm.
And there was that, whatever that place was called,
Oh, yes,
behind
The
Diamond,
bar.
yes, I can't come up with the bar name. It's not awful.
yeah,
Half
Half
acre,
Baker.
half acre.
Yeah.
correct.
So would this enhance that?
Well, those are not residential properties. So
Right,
this
so it's-
one currently wouldn't apply to that, but now it
Right.
could, if
Yeah.
these changes were implemented.
I like the changes. I think we need something that the police department can use. And I can envision there will be more disruptive properties around the city. And we need something for the homeowners. They've invested a lot of time and money in their homes, and then you get a property that's, well, that we've had comments from. And that's no way to have to live, and then they fear their neighbors and they fear going out of their houses, and so the more teeth it has, I would be happy with. That we, something to really go and say, listen, gotta stop this. Yes.
And I'd like to add that sometimes what we hear from residents,
Mhm.
we don't have the ability to enforce even with this ordinance.
Right.
So I just want to make clear that, we can enforce certain things by ordinance. And our hope is that we'll have a little bit more teeth as it comes to this, but some of it is we have to have information, complaint filed, things like that in order to be able to move it along the line. So it will certainly provide another tool, which is always
That's it,
helpful.
yeah, another tool in the toolbox.
There you go. Other council back.
Yeah, so just looking at F, we're talking about situations in which the police have responded to the property. It doesn't necessarily have to result in an arrest to be counted.
No.
It does have to, yes, that's how we have worded it.
Oh, I think I know, yeah, involve the arrest. Okay, got it.
There are some other towns that have wording that is different, and we decided to keep it kind of objective so that there wouldn't be vague interpretations that could then, the ordinance might be kind of vulnerable to attack.
Sure.
Constitutional type things.
Other questions, comments on this? So what you needed from us was if we wanted to move it forward?
Yes, I'll vote to move it forward if that's what you are inclined to do.
Much pleasure. We voting or taking a motion?
A motion would
A
be.
motion. We need a motion.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to move this forward. I think this is reasonable change.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded to send this forward. And then we'll see it again, maybe.
Okay.
It would be on Monday night for first reading.
Mhm.
And then it would not go back to another committee again.
Councilor.
Just a question about that, I mean, because this will be something that'll generate a lot of interest and potentially public comment. If, for people who do find out about this and are interested in commenting, would they be able to even though it's first reading, do we typically allow comment during
No.
first reading?
We typically don't. Yeah, we typically suggest that people comment at the second reading.
The second reading, okay.
Oftentimes, first reading is a referral to the committee, but the second reading is the one where the vote will be taken that night. So that's when we suggest that the public make their comments.
Council Forney.
So if there is a lot of comment that after that first reading, we can defer back to the committee to get more input.
Yes,
Yes.
So
Okay.
that's, I don't know if that's where you're going.
that's what he was asking.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. City Manager Lori, is there anything else you have that is not on the agenda?
Heavens, no, not at the moment.
Okay, with that being said, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:03. Stay tuned, finance is coming right up. I suspect.